Tēnā tātou katoa. Good evening. Many North Island roads and bridges have been smashed by Cyclone Gabrielle, and in some regions by the forestry slash. The floodwaters drove into them. Now the government's putting up $250 million to repair them, those damaged by other recent storms. The state of emergency will be extended for another 7 days, and the government has created a new position, Cyclone Recovery Minister. The death toll remains at 11, but police today confirmed the identity of another victim, 55-year-old Sue Cacciopoli of Taradale, who was visiting a friend in the Esk Valley when the floodwaters came through. Well, Laura Tupou is in Napier, and Laura, the government's announced a new package of support.
Yes, good evening, Mike. That's right. The Prime Minister has appointed a Cyclone Recovery Minister, Grant Robertson, to oversee the rebuild of Cyclone Gabrielle's destruction. It began today with a $250 million injection into road funding. But as political editor Jenna Lynch explains, that'll barely scrape the sides.
The road to Tene Rotoa looks like someone has taken a bite out of it, carved up by a force of water it simply could not handle. Gisborne residents frustrated by their isolation.
Our roads are shocking, our roads are disgusting.
We've got to fix up the potholes.
No, the potholes are nothing now, Father.
Aren't they? Oh.
No, it's the access in and out of here.
There's not enough funding goes into roading.
It is what it is, eh?
In Hawke's Bay, this community has cleared the silt from their road.
This has all been cleared one laneway.
But it is still an utter mess. Our state highway network torn to shreds by Cyclone Gabrielle.
Lift your feet up, baby. Lift your feet up.
Bridges buckled under her pressure, hills tumbled onto highways, and silt seeped across vital routes, cutting off entire communities.
The damage is significant and on a scale not seen in New Zealand for at least a generation.
This is a map of the Gisborne region. All the black lines are the closed roads. The red lines show where the road is open with restrictions. So, for instance, it might be down to one lane in parts. The famous coastal state highway 35 is broken. There is no way to get from Tolaga Bay to Te Puia. This one requires significant repairs. Gisborne to Wairoa is impassable to the public, but they've managed to open it to critical supplies and essential services. Gisborne to Opotiki cut off with only managed convoys twice a day for supplies.
There is a big journey ahead to respond, recover and rebuild. And I want all of those in affected regions to know that we will be with you on that journey.
And in Hawke's Bay, a sea of black, no access from Napier north to Wairoa. This is going to require significant repair. State Highway 5, the Napier Taupo Road, in a state of disrepair. They're hoping to have that open to emergency vehicles by the end of the week. And 2 bridges south of Napier are closed, with single lanes open to critical services as their structural integrity is assessed. Many of the country's broken roads will need to move.
We have a large job ahead to determine which state and local roads can be rebuilt and which cannot, or perhaps should not, be replaced.
Today, the government making the first of many funding announcements, $250 million to start fixing the roads. The Finance Minister saw some of the damage firsthand yesterday.
Some of those areas, total wipeout of the bridges that's there. You can imagine that does take a little bit of time, but Wakutahi is prioritising based on lifelines, getting access for isolated communities.
Roads everywhere, now roads to nowhere.
Jenna joins us from Parliament now. And Jenna, how much money is going to flow out the door?
The Finance Minister and now Cyclone Recovery Minister described it as a rolling wall, basically incrementally funding stuff as they find the need. They began today with a business support package, a $50 million contingency fund. The details are still being worked through on that one. National was not impressed with it. I've just had a statement through from them saying it's all been kicked to a task force at a time when every day matters. People need to know whether they will get paid if they turn up to work tomorrow, and the government simply hasn't provided that clarity. But the real cost here is the infrastructure. It is going to be astronomical. 400 kilometres of our state highway network is urgently being worked on. To put that in perspective, it's the equivalent of Wellington to Taupo and then some. The Prime Minister said it was the most damage of a generation. Think what we have faced this generation. The Canterbury earthquakes, for instance. Christchurch, almost a decade on, is still being rebuilt, and some in government are prepared for this to take even longer.
Political editor Jenna Lynch, tēnā koe.